Good morning, everyone. Seeing the time having arrived, I will call the meeting of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency for December the 3rd to order, and we'll start with a salute to the flag of our nation. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll? Yes.
Joyner. Here. Nesbitt. Here. Westland. Here. Yukovich. Here. Mueller.
Here.
We're good. Agenda review. Anything on the agenda that needs to be brought to our attention?
I just want to point out to the board that there is a pink on item M because the action was incorrect, and the pink has the corrected action.
Okay, fine. Any other changes on the agenda review? Oh, Director Nesbitt.
If we go by the minutes.
Yeah, I'll get there. I just wanted to make sure that.
In case you didn't want the minutes on there, he wanted you to have the opportunity to just take the run off the agenda. You
See, that's what we're talking about.
You'd consider it that way.
All right, thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Mayor. Then I'll ask for approval of the minutes of the October 22nd meeting.
Second, whatever.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 22nd meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing it as passed, we will now, we've already taken care of agenda review. We'll move to public comment. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission on anything that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and go to the consent calendar. Anything on the consent calendar that needs to be removed for discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none.
Move approval consent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. We will move now to item G, the presentation Bay to Basin Recreation and Tourism Travel Impact Study. It's an information item.
Yes.
Oh,
Aaron,
yes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'll be taking this item.
Good.
I'm pleased this morning to share the findings and recommendations from a multi-county study that was led by the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. This study looked at recreation and tourism impact on 4 counties, El Dorado, Amador, Placer, and Nevada counties, in terms of tourists and travel preferences, impacts, and what are things that we can do across the 4 counties to improve on the travel and destinational improvements for tourists that come to the 4 counties. We all know what days like this can lead to snow in the higher regions of our counties, which then leads to tourism, to all the activities that we have up in the higher elevations. But also in the lower elevations, there's quite a foundation for agritourism and heritage tourism, looking at history of the county. So a number of these items are embedded within the study, and it's truly a data-rich study that will lend itself to further efforts and explorations by the 4 different counties on this topic. And what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Mr. Mark Rayback from Wood Rogers to share the details of this study. And then following Mark's presentation, Woody Deloria from the El Dorado County Transportation Commission will wrap up with a few comments. So with any further ado, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Great.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you again for the opportunity to come speak with you today about the Beta Basin study. Again, my name is Mark Rayback, and I'm with Wood Rogers. We're a civil transportation firm headquartered in Sacramento, and we were fortunate enough to work with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission and quite a few partners, which I'll show you here in a second, on this great study. We also had a fantastic team of sub-consultants that really did a lot of the great work, and I'll kind of run through that for you today. I'll start off real quick with just kind of the purpose of the study, and it was really to identify and quantify tourism impacts. In the region, there's a lot of traffic, and they obviously have impacts on our system. So we wanted to try to get a handle on what that is, find out are there solutions available to us to address some of those impacts, understand how that rural system supports both the economy and the transportation needs, not only for our residents but also for the tourists that come in and enjoy our region. Try to provide some data for performance-based transportation planning. And again, you'll see this in the recommendations, but the idea here is we need to be able to tell our story and show if we get some investments, how do we leverage that, and what are the good things we can do with that. And then kind of last and definitely not least is, as you all know, a lot of our transportation funding is really based on resident population. And we wanted to show that we're serving a whole lot more than just the resident population, and maybe we need to think about some of those funding distributions and how those are applied.
When you, just clarification, when you make that statement, you're talking about state funding models, federal funding models?
All the above.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So again, I mentioned we had a very diverse and large set of partners. Again, El Dorado County Transportation Commission was the lead agency on this. But we definitely didn't go it alone, and you'll see a lot of the folks listed there. Some of the folks that aren't listed there, we also had a good private sector representation, tourism industry or tourism associations, chamber of commerces, et cetera. And so, and again, the graphic here on the lower right kind of represents the study area that we looked at and focused on. And so what I'll do is kind of go through the process, and I'll give you some highlights of sort of each of the major steps of the process, and then I have some backup data that we can quickly run through. We started the process, or the project itself, with kind of some origin destination studies. So we wanted to know who was coming and where they were going. We used some new technology, some Bluetooth readers. We mounted those in like 20 different locations throughout the region. The way they work is when you drive by with a cell phone or a nav system or anything that has Bluetooth capabilities, it picks up a MAC ID. It assigns a unique ID to it. There's no personal information. I don't know who went by. I just know somebody with a Bluetooth went by this location at this time. As they progress, and you'll see a map here in a second, as they progress through the network, we can kind of track where they went and how long it took them to get there. And then using some algorithms, we were also able to determine which of those are tourists, which of those are commuters. And again, I'll show you a picture of that here in a second. Kind of the next major phase was some polling user surveys. We had a public polling company on our team. They did 10,000 automated calls and then 300 follow-up interviews in Sacramento, San Francisco, and San Jose region. So it's triple that. There's 30,000 calls, 900 special interviews. We asked about if you go to the basin, where do you go? How often do you go? Would you use transit? Do you use transit? So there's a lot of data, and we'll kind of scratch the surface on that here in a second. I guess the takeaway, and I'll touch it again, is there's a tremendous amount of data that's available to the project partners for future use, and we'll touch on that. We hired, part of our team included an economic data, economic planning systems, and they did an economic study and analysis for us. They took a look at tourism trends, who's coming, why are they coming, where are the growth areas. And then finally, we had a funding analysis section, and we had somebody that you're familiar with, Mark Watts, DJ Smith, were part of our team for that. They took a look at kind of what is the existing funding mechanisms, what opportunities might present us, and then be presented to us with some of the new opportunities that are being looked at currently in the administration in both state and federal, and other opportunities to help maybe solve some of our funding challenges. So this, back to kind of the travel data, this is just one sample of some of the data that was there, and the way this works is these little pie charts represent the locations where those Bluetooth readers were at, and then what you'll see here is in the bar graph, the yellow, it represents the commuters and the green represents the tourists. And so down in Sacramento and Roseville, you'll see it's probably what you expected, around 95% commuters and 5% tourists, and it maybe gets a little bit 93 to 8 or 93 to 7 here as you get into Roseville. When you get into the Auburn area, you're about 50-50. Where you start to see it is in Truckee, Tahoe City, Kings Beach areas. We're up around, the Truckee one is 80% tourists and 20% commuters on this particular day. And so you can kind of see how this works in the region. I think the important takeaway here is as you get into that Tahoe Basin, and you'll see some statistics here in a second, but it's really, on any given day, it's roughly 50-50, tourists versus the actual commuter, the people that live and commute and travel in that region. The next major step was the polling. Again, I mentioned 30,000 automated calls. Those 30,000 calls gave us a subset of people that we did follow-up interviews with. We did 900 of those, again, in the 3 different regions, Sacramento, San Jose, San Francisco. Again, tons and tons and tons of data. And so there's more data than anybody can imagine, I suppose. And so that's all available to project partners. You can sort it and query it in a variety of different ways, and this is just some of those. And this is really intended to show you that there's just tons and magnitude of data that you can continue to use for different purposes going forward. Some highlights of those results. We found, again, and so this is broken down by the areas where we did the surveys. And so you can see Sacramento region, about 44% of the folks we talked to go during the non-winter months, and that drops to about 29% in the winter, and then about 27% throughout the year evenly, and you'll see that similar statistic for San Francisco, San Jose regions. I think some important takeaways are, really that first one is really important to some of our tourism partners that were part of the study. We're finding that 67% of the people in these regions drive straight through to their destination. They never stop. We never capture them. We never pull them off the highway. 50% of the local destination traffic is visitors. And again, in that Tahoe Basin, I showed you some of those charts. On any given day, it's roughly 50-50, tourist versus commuter in the Tahoe Basin specifically. And the other interesting sort of takeaway is in the non-winter, the summer months, people generally like to drive Highway 50. We heard a lot of that. It's a pretty highway. It's a nice drive. Maybe people want to go to South Shore for destination. But in the winter, there's a high preference to use I-80, and I think it's just because of the quality of travel experience that I-80 offers in the winter months.
Better skiing, too.
Another major part, again, I'm kind of going to hit some of the high points. Another major part, we wanted to talk to the folks about transit. The interesting thing is, roughly 40% indicate they currently use transit wherever they live, whether that's Sacramento, San Francisco, San Jose. But then when you get into the basin, 33% are saying, we wouldn't use it. But the opportunity is that roughly 50% would use transit if they felt that it was meeting their needs. And so there's a lot of data about why they feel it doesn't meet their needs, and it really has to do with connectivity and just knowing what's available is a big part of why they're not using transit. And this includes transit not only to get from your destination or your origin to your destination, but also once you arrive in the basin and going around and seeing different or experiencing different opportunity. So just kind of in summary, I think one of the important takeaways is that we're seeing most visitors are coming from Bay Area in the non-winter months, which I think is probably, anecdotally, you probably see that on the freeways. Mm-hmm. But I think the important part of this is we now have some data to really prove that. The other really important takeaway is people would stop and spend more time if they knew other opportunities that existed sort of in between their origin and their destination. There's just a general lack of knowledge or understanding about the different things that are available for them. And you'll see how this plays into transportation and also dealing with congestion here as we go forward. So using kind of some statistics, with the regional population of about 11 million people, and we looked at when people are coming and how often they're coming, we're estimating from the 3 regions that we surveyed about 6.5 million visits per year. So we're getting 6.5 million visits into a region that has a population a lot less than that. So we're really serving a lot of folks from outside than those that live here. And again, that's just the important part of that 6.5 million visit number is that's just from the Sacramento, San Jose, San Francisco regions. It doesn't include other parts of California, people coming over from the Nevada side, or people coming from other parts of the world. So that's probably on the low end. So we're servicing, I think the takeaway message, we're servicing a lot more people than actually live here and are part of our base population. The next kind of major effort was economic analysis, and really what we did is we had them do kind of a market assessment of the various parts of the region, and just kind of to be quick and concise today, we're going to focus a little bit on sort of the Tahoe Basin side of it, North Shore, South Shore. We broke it out because they are 2 distinct regions, and the way they measure their tourist economy is a little bit different. We looked at broad tourism factors. Again, what's drawing people? What are they coming for? What would they like to do more of if they knew or if that opportunity existed? And then again, as with everything else, we're data rich, so we're trying to boil it down and do something meaningful, but there's a lot more data available for future use. I'm going to show you a quick summary here, North Shore and South Shore, because that is generally the destinations we looked at. South Shore has about 1.5 or 1.6 million visitor days per year. The interesting thing about South Shore is the study found that number over time is pretty flat or even has declined. It kind of bounces along, whereas you contrast that with the North Shore, and we're seeing about 2.5 to 3 million visitor days per year, and that growth is pretty strong. It's plus 5 to 7% over time, and I'll show you a graph of that here. You can see it's grown since 2003 to 2012. We've had a pretty steady growth, and this is travel expenditure in the North Lake Tahoe. Now, when we explored that with the polling, a lot of that is really attributable to some of the investments that's been made on the North Shore. The Truckee bypass was brought up as not only as a good transportation improvement, but it created an economic destination in Truckee that didn't exist before. The North Star Village came up quite a bit. The Squaw Valley Village came up quite a bit. So there's been an investment, and it actually draws people in. And so that's a positive thing. South Shore is trying to catch up, as I think many of you know, but they've been flat. So there's clearly a distinct difference there in how the tourists and where they go to spend their money. Some overall conclusions from the economic side is there is strength in the key tourism segments. We see a lot of growth and potential growth in agritourism and viticulture, especially in the foothill areas. You've seen a lot of that, I'm sure, here with some of the stuff in the county. Outdoor recreation and adventure tourism still remains in high demand in the higher elevations. Heritage tourism is another kind of growing market space that was sought out or that people were seeking out. We think that overall the prospects are good, that the growth is going to continue. It seems about 1 to 3% kind of throughout the region seems to be a pretty good number for that projected growth. But there are some areas that really stick out, and it's Amador County and the North Lake Tahoe, which, as they continue to make investments, you're looking at 5% plus per year. And again, the Amador County is just the boom in the viticulture and agritourism has really taken off in those counties over there. So some interesting takeaways there. So the next part is probably stuff you hear about a little bit, I would guess, but the transportation funding is tough, and it's very tight, and it's not really geared to address a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. There are some opportunities, however. Active Transportation Program, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is a pretty new program and funds, again, active transportation type projects, bike, ped, which do serve a lot in the Tahoe Basin and the county there. They're really a good way to move people. CMAQ, which you've had before, cap and trade is an emerging opportunity. Again, how that plays out over the future and with the challenges that cap and trade has, I guess we'll remain to see. But it is a potential funding source for some of the project types that could make a difference or help with the tourism impacts. There was a transportation industry initiative. Of course, that's been pulled back and put on hold. That was to I think it was the VLF fee or vehicle license fee initially, and it's been pulled back and not moving forward at this point in time. Through Secretary Kelly, there was a California Transportation Infrastructure's Priorities. I think, were you on that, Celia?
Yeah.
So, and she was impressed by the Fix It First and sustainable funding efforts that were come out of that. The interesting thing on that is one of the things that did come out of that is as you probably heard, Caltrans is looking at exploring a pilot program for a vehicle mileage fee. It is revenue neutral, I think, is the goal. So we'll see where that goes. But that's one of the things that came out of that and is a potential funding opportunity.
And if I might, these funding sources are, obviously ones we're aware of. But I think the real benefit of this study is it gives more ammunition for those applications for competitive funding because it shows much more than just the population, the kind of impacts that tourism has and makes our applications that much more compelling.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly right. And I think that really is the benefit. There's the local voter tax threshold. There's some bills about changing that from the 67 to 55. Those are sort of somewhere in progress. I guess we'll see where those end up in the next year or so. The kind of the big last ones, and I think so you touched on, is adjustment of population-based funding formulas. We feel like that's an opportunity. Again, we're serving a lot more people than our permanent residents. Our team kind of felt like it's probably likely more palatable at the federal versus the state level. I think it's tough to go to your neighbor always and peel off the top, but if at the federal level there may be some opportunity, it might be a little easier, was a thought. The other sort of interesting thing that we found and would recommend pursuing is something called cross-regional cost sharing, and it's actually in the Streets and Highways Code, section 188.8. What it does is it allows cross regions to kind of pool their STIP resources and then spend them in other regions. The hard part is it is a voluntary thing, that nobody can mandate that. But again, as was mentioned, you got some ammo now, and I think the study gives you a tool to sit down with those partners at SACOG and at MTC and VTA and have these type of conversations. And so we feel like that is an opportunity that probably could be explored, since that's generally who you're serving. Some of the obvious impacts: congestion, roadway life cycle. A part of that is, the roads here are designed, again, for 100,000 population or whatever, and serving 6 million people. And so there are increased maintenance costs. And then the interesting thing is traveler experience. And I'm going to touch on it here in a second, but a lot of the economic and tourist growth has to do with how comfortable people feel and whether they feel the system gets them to the destinations and the things they want to experience. And if it doesn't, then they're willing to go other places. And so, there's some missed opportunity if we're not careful. And we think that there's traveler information, and you're going to see it twice, I think, on the next slide. It's really important. People told us a lot that they just don't know where they can go and how to get there and what opportunities exist. So, to kind of address some of those things, some of the types of projects that we heard would be beneficial to supporting the continued tourism and tourism growth. Improved access. This is really, we heard this more actually on US 50 than on 80. People feel like on 50, you drive along and you get off, and we're not sure how or where or if you can even get back on. And so there was some concerns there. A little bit on 80, but mostly on Highway 50 that came up quite a bit. Better lighting came up across the board. And I'll tell you, as I'm getting older, I guess, I drove back from Reno last night, and it was snowing and raining, and for the first time in my life, I had a hard time seeing. So I guess I'm getting older, and so I understand about the better lighting now. So signage was a big one. Again, it goes into the traveler information. People just don't know exactly where they can go and how to get on and off and what opportunities exist. And that really dives into some opportunity with intelligent transportation system, traveler information specifically. Metering of traffic during peak periods. It's kind of an interesting one. One of the things we looked at, and again, this is some heavy lifting for Sue and team probably, but one idea was, hotels always have a noon checkout. So you throw a slug of people on the road at noon to go home on Sunday afternoon. What if we could work with them so some checked out at 10, some at 11, some at noon, some at 1, so you could spread your peak. And so there's some opportunity there about could you meter traffic through those type of activities and other type of collaboration. Again, if people knew they could get off and stop at Starbucks, would you sit here for a half an hour, have a cup of coffee, and wait for the slug to go through? Because it is very peak driven. Parking came up quite a bit as a need. Primarily when you get to your destination in the basin, people feel like they drive around circles and they want to see something, but they don't know where or how to park to go get there. Again, then that really relates to the transit connectivity. There's things like the wine bus in Amador and El Dorado, and there's things, but they're not really viewed as being connected. A good example that we heard is in the Lake Tahoe Basin. You can ride Bluego on the South Shore, but that doesn't get you to the North Shore and then back, or you can take the trolley the other way, and that partly gets you there. But people don't feel like there's a connected system that they can move around their destination. And again, the last part, and I restate it again because we kept hearing it so much, is dissemination of traveler information. Again, people would stop and eat at a restaurant or have a cup of coffee or go see a museum or go see something to avoid the peak if they knew how to get off the road, go experience that, and get back on to miss the peak. So there's a lot of talk about how do we spread people out, and it benefits the whole transportation system by kind of softening that peak. So that kind of leads us to the last part is how do you actually get there? We think the first and most important thing is building a consensus. You know, I think we all anecdotally kind of know there's these impacts and there's these challenges, but we're not speaking with one voice, and we think that this study kind of gives us an opportunity to say, okay, here's a study, and there's still a lot of things out there, but we've got to come together and recognize this is a challenge, and we need to be, you know, on the same page about what are our problems and challenges, and how might we solve those. We want to use the study and others to help inform transportation connectivity planning and projects. We think that, you know, you have a list of, that's just a sample list there, more detail in the report itself, but you have a list of type of projects that maybe as the planners are thinking about what's important could fit to help drive some of this tourism business and industry. Public-private sector coalition, again, how do you disseminate traveler and tourism information? There's tremendous opportunity both economically and from a transportation perspective to spread people out throughout the network to experience different things, be parts of different parts of the economy, but it also reduces that peak flow on the major corridors. And you know, there's data in here that really could inform marketing of how to do that. Again, you can slice it. You know, one of the interesting takeaways that we kind of joke about is, you know, if I was back in a fraternity, I would have a fraternity party in South Lake Tahoe in the winter because more young women from San Jose come in the winter than men. Figure that one out. But you can slice and dice the data to inform good marketing decisions. So, kind of an interesting thing. And then the last kind of major things is support the funding efforts, coalesce. I know there's a Trans-Sierra Coalition that's kind of starting, but we think that to tell your story to the SACOGs and the MTCs and the VTAs, you really need to coalesce. You need to go in a group. You need to use this. You need to use this tool to show the data and find those cross-region sharing opportunities. You know, kind of the thought is for MTC to, you know, give us $500,000 to do some traveler information is probably a rounding error in there, but it's a big deal up here, and we could do a lot with a little. And then kind of tailing of that, and there's detailed but performance measures. We need to show to continue those cross-region opportunities and get people to invest. We need to show that with a little bit of money we can make some good strides, and so we talk a lot about performance measures and how you might use those to better tell your story and seek those opportunities. And last and definitely not least, you know, one of the lessons, the greatest takeaways we had is there's always you know, and you guys have a tough decision to move these projects forward. Maybe you don't have every nickel accounted for, and you maybe don't know how you're going to build it. But priority projects need to continue to be developed. Need to continue to push because, you know, money sometimes just shows up, and we had several examples of that. And so those priority projects, you need to continue to develop those, and it's a painful decision, but you know, we're finding it's the right decision and the way to keep things moving. So with that, I'll take any questions. Well, I guess one more thing before I introduce Woody. The full report is on the EDCTC website, and so there's a lot of detail there. But again, you know, I'd remind you, behind that report is, for lack of a better term, boatloads of data on public polling, on traffic and origin destination, and a lot of different stuff. And Woody and EDCTC has access to that, and through the project team, they can make requests, and Woody will sort and slice and dice data until he goes crazy, slicing and dicing data. So with that, I'll take any questions or turn it over to Woody.
Just before you go on, there's a BMW out in the parking lot that has its lights on, so if anybody has a BMW, okay, fine.
Woody only pays me to drive a truck. So
Good.
Yeah.
Did you have a?
Yeah.
No. Supervisor Euler has a.
So, first of all, if you would please make sure that this report gets to our CEO's office and our planning department. Very good data in there for a lot of our Tahoe-related initiatives. And it's nice to see on the North Shore that our investments are paying off.
Absolutely.
That's very good. Second of all, let's be really careful what we ask for in terms of this reallocation of funding. Because I remind you, and all of our city partners here, particularly Roseville who's not here, Darrell Steinberg on a couple of occasions introduced legislation to reallocate sales tax dollars away from situs base and to population base, believing that Sacramento County was losing out by virtue of things like our malls and things up here. So before we head down that road of saying it should be more user-based instead of population-based, let's all be cognizant of what that might bring up in terms of our other revenue streams. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you.
Good morning, board members. I'm Woody Deloria. I'm a senior transportation planner with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and I was the project manager on this study. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for your commitment to the project and Celia's commitment and her staff. So I really appreciate that.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right. Okay. Any other questions from members?
I got a
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
on a couple of things that you brought up. I met a lot of people from all over the United States on a cruise and found out that California may be the only state that does not allow in all jurisdictions the food, lodging, and gas signs that are. It's only limited to populations of under 5,000. And I think this is one of the things that would help travelers, because when you're going up Interstate 80, you go by the McDonald's, but there was the off-ramp. And so that's one of the things. Also along that line, now that we have electronic billboards, that they're an excellent opportunity to allow visitors to know what's going on. And I think that's a couple of the things. The other thing, although it probably will never happen, we can get a train to go to the 49er games, but we can't get a train to go up to the snow like it used to years ago. And those are some of the things, even though the cost is probably prohibitive, but will draw people from San Jose. There used to be quite a few people, I don't know, back in the 50s, and I don't know how many people, but I know there used to be a train that went to Soda Springs, and you could jump on it in the morning in San Jose and go up and ski. So those are just a couple of my comments that in the future, I think that these are some of the things would help. But I want to compliment you. This is probably the finest study I've ever seen. You're using the new technology, and it provides a ton of information that we can use. So this is really wonderful. And instead of sitting there counting cars with a clicker, you've come up with, I think, what I want to compliment you and your firm on doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, Woody had a great scope, and the team did a great scope together, so appreciate that.
All right, any more comments? Celia, did you have anything to wrap up? Or, no?
No, as I say, I think that this provides really good information for making an argument for discretionary money. I think that there are grant opportunities as well as one thing I did want to mention about. I saw Board Member Euler looking puzzled about the cross-county state transportation improvement program, or the STIP sharing. And of course, as the board is well aware, we won't have a STIP allocation until all of us are well gone.
A good reason for us to sign up.
So we're happy to share ours. But there have been some examples of cooperative agreements amongst the Amador, Alpine, and Calaveras counties to do projects of multi-county interest. So that opportunity is always available when there's a project that's compelling enough for multiple counties. Not sure we're seeing that here, but theoretically something in the Truckee area with Nevada County, something like that. So I just wanted to address that a little bit.
Okay, good, thank you. Director Nesbitt.
One quick question, was SedCorp involved in any of this? Yeah, because it seems like they would be the best people to disseminate this information and to help develop strategies based on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alrighty, thank you so much for that presentation. We will now adjourn as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and convene as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. We have item H, which is the consent calendar. Any questions on the consent calendar? Anyone in the audience wish to address anything on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item H, the consent calendar for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The item has moved. Then we will move to item number I, Bus Pass Subsidy Program.
Good morning, members of the board. We're asking the board today to approve the Bus Pass Subsidy Program as described in the attachment 1. And we're also asking the board to authorize the executive director to execute agreements with eligible social service agencies and organizations to implement the bus pass subsidy program. By way of brief background, in 2011, as part of the unmet transit needs process, the Placer Collaborative Network and other organizations came before the board and urged the board to implement a bus pass subsidy program to meet transportation needs for low-income individuals. And during that year, we were preparing a short-range plan for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, and so that initiative, on recommendation of the board, as well as other initiatives, were included in that short-range plan that the board approved that fall of 2011. And within the plan, it basically had the recommendation that any sort of bus pass subsidy program be geared to providing a time-limited safety trip sort of need versus providing for long-term transportation needs. And so we convened a working group in 2013 with social service organizations and agencies, as well as the transit operators, to develop the bus pass subsidy program design. And we have a recommended program, and that's included in Attachment 1. The attachment includes a description of the program, and it includes the rules and criteria and guidelines for the program. It includes an application as well as a model bus pass subsidy program. There's also a flow chart for those who just want to get to the the bottom line and kind of see how this thing will work, which I will attempt to summarize here shortly. And so the program, in its essence, will be a pilot project for a 2-year period. We will kick it off hopefully July 1st, 2015. And social service organizations, agencies would apply annually to become eligible. The agencies, once approved, would go purchase their passes at the local transit operators at full price, and the social service organizations, agencies that are approved as part of this program would then come back to us with their invoice, and because we would have an agreement approved by the board, that we would then provide a subsidy of 75% of their costs for the passes. And the agencies would be required to report to us on the use of the bus pass subsidy program, their trip needs, purposes, as detailed in the program design. The transit operators basically have no administrative responsibilities with respect to the program. That was sort of a long debate in terms of how we would implement this, and we ultimately ended up where that the agencies, organizations would go to them, buy the pass, and that would be it, basically. And the administrative side would be by the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. And so we would have the administrative role, we would have the policy role, which is the board's function, and we would collect the data and report to the board on usage of the program and secure funding for the program. The budget for the CTSA includes a line item of up to $50,000 for this program. We will adjust that amount probably over the next year as part of the 15-16 budget based upon actual usage, so we'll have a better handle on how much we need to allocate towards the program. And with that, we presented this back to the Transit Operators Working Group and to the TAC, and they concurred with the staff recommendation. I do believe we have some people here in the audience that may want to speak to this issue, and so I'm glad to answer any questions.
All right. Questions from directors? Director.
Thanks.
Director Hatch.
I didn't quite reach that one. I tried to follow it, and I kind of got confused. The end user person that's getting the benefit of the pass, what do they go through to get the pass? They contact their social services.
So these would, yeah, the bus pass subsidy program is not intended for the average person on the street.
Sure.
So they would not be able to call up and say, I want to get a pass.
Right.
So you have organizations that have clients. And so the organizations, as part of their application, would indicate the number of clients, the clients' needs in terms of attending various governmental assistance programs or medical appointments. And so the agency buys the passes, and then as part of however they choose to disseminate information, that's within
Okay.
that's within the
Their
organization.
bailiwick.
Yeah.
And we're overseeing it, so I guess, shouldn't we have some say in how easy it is for them to get that, or application times, or any of that, or is that out of our purview?
Well, they apply annually, and so as part of their application, they will indicate their need in terms, we will need, let's say, 1,000 passes, and we will need, say, 80 to 90 passes a month.
Yep.
And so, we will approve them for that allotment, so that'll be kind of their cap. And then they will go purchase their passes and come back to us, and then they'll have to live within that cap that has been established as part of the application. Of course, so that's their estimate up front in the beginning of the fiscal year. And I suppose we could have provisions for if for some reason their demand is greater than what they forecast, to adjust.
I think I have what you just explained totally understood. I've got that. I'm
It took us
talking
2 years to get here, so.
It's going to take me not that long, I hope, thanks to your expertise. I'm more trying to focus on, here's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid somebody's going to come to one of our board meetings and say, I'm trying to get a pass, I can't get it, you should do something about it. In other words, there's going to be an individual who wants a pass and can't get one for whatever reason. Is that our role in any way, or am I off the boat completely here?
Well, part of the eligibility for passes they are through some sort of a social service program, that there is an agreement there that they are a client of one of these agencies. And so coming to us directly is not the way it works. I mean, and this also is a pilot program.
Yeah.
So there may be glitches that we just don't anticipate at this point, and we'll work through. But I think one of the primary things to address your concern is that they be a client of a social service agency.
Okay, that satisfies me. I assumed that, but I really wanted to hear it and make sure, so, okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Director Euler?
Yes, the budget anticipates 22,222 passes. What kind of a needs assessment was done to arrive at this number? Or is this just, that's what it defaults to by virtue of that's how much money we have that we can allocate to this?
Well, when we were looking at the program back with the short-range plan, there was an anticipated demand of maybe 1,000 passes a month. And so then we got into discussions with other organizations, and so the number sort of grew to about 2,000 a month. And then from there, it sort of worked with budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is anticipated that this will mostly accommodate need, but we are being cognizant of budget constraints.
Correct. And as I noted, we'll have a year. Well, it's a pilot program, so we have 2 years. We have a year. After the first year, we hopefully will come back and right-size it. I'm not sure if 22,000 passes will be sold.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Euler?
Question. I know sure it said multi-purpose senior service program. In Loomis, we have a senior center, but it's not connected with it. It's a 501c. It's a nonprofit. Would they be eligible for these?
That's the Loomis Life Center?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't see any reason why they would not be eligible for this program. I mean, there's a list of governmental assistance programs identified there, and so if that social service organization serves one of those programs or needs, then they would be eligible. I don't know enough about the Loomis Life Center of whether they apply for some of those funding programs.
No, they haven't applied for. I know they haven't applied for any federal funding because they want to be independent, so it's locally supported. And that's my question: is that I think they should be eligible, but under these criteria, they may not be eligible. They're a self-sufficient senior center.
we can't really determine that on the fly, but we can certainly talk to them.
If you would, please, I'd
Right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't it, this is based on the individuals they serve. I mean, you're determining the eligibility of the individuals, not necessarily the organization. And just because the organization doesn't take any federal funding, it's the individuals that they serve. So you're simply using the organization as a,
Conduit. Yeah.
what am I saying, outreach.
Right.
A vehicle for outreach.
Right.
And letting, certainly any organization, I mean, it can be the Kiwanis Club. We don't care who it is that we let know this is available, because it's made, the determination is made on the individual basis.
But it's also, they have to be able to agree to the agreements as part of the administration. Of
The
this.
individual does, or
No,
the
no,
organization?
the organization.
So there's no way to bypass an organization and get this directly from the agency?
It is not set up to go
not- it's not
directly
up to-
from us to the individual riders.
And is there a reason why we didn't create an opportunity for us to be a recognized organization as well, so that somebody could directly online? I mean, this is one of those
Because
things.
we're cognizant of the administrative, rather significant administrative effort that would take to screen individuals' eligibility for bus subsidies.
Okay.
And by going through social service agencies who already have these clients that are primarily the ones who are in need, then it cuts out a lot of administrative costs.
So then maybe to Miguel's particular case, it's more that kind of an organization, or the Kiwanis Club, is used as a vehicle to let folks know that this does exist, but they need to contact one of these other entities in order to actually get it.
Yes.
So Miguel's organization might not qualify for actually issuing them, but they could certainly let their folks know these are available.
Right.
Exactly.
All righty. Director Nesbitt.
So, kind of on that same subject, so somebody goes through one of these agencies, and maybe the agency doesn't quite feel like they qualify, for lack of a better term. Would we be the appeal board if that person really wanted to take that further? I mean, a judgment of an agency, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I know what you're saying. I would
I
also.
mean, at some point, like they've said over there, if somebody is really dissatisfied, really thinks they deserve it, we're going to pretty much be acting as the appeal board? Or?
Well, I would add that we are subsidizing 75% of it.
Right.
The social service agencies are subsidizing 25% of
Right.
it. So we're not the only ones with a financial stake in these determinations.
Correct.
I don't know if there is an appeals process. David might be.
I guess that would be the
We-
question.
yeah.
If there is, would we be amongst that, or would we?
Yeah, we never envisioned an appeals process. We envisioned having an agreement with the agency, and the agency has clients, many of the clients who may qualify for these various social service programs, for example, aid to families with dependent children. And through the interaction of the social service worker, caseworker, they may say, well, okay, we need to get you to this appointment. So here's a pass. And so I guess we never really envisioned that there would be somebody disgruntled and not getting a pass, because if the organization saw an opportunity that it may need passes, it would apply. So I guess the thing that we really need to do is make sure we get an outreach, hopefully working with Placer Collaborative Network, and just getting the word out so that all of these organizations know that there's an ability to apply for this program. And so,
Okay, that was just.
so there may be, I guess, disgruntled people who.
There's always going to be somebody that
Yeah.
says, well, they've got a pass. I don't necessarily fit into any of these categories or agencies, but I deserve one just as much. And how are they going to?
Yeah, and I guess that's why we're calling it a pilot. And as Celia pointed out,
Objection noted, basically.
yeah, we tried to figure out everything as best we could as planners, but there's always something that we will miss, and so and that, I guess, is where the case by case basis will come up, and we'll work with the organization to see if we can work with another organization to provide the pass.
Director Russell.
I just have a comment, I think, because this is a pilot that after a year of working with the agencies, just to, have that documentation. And again, if we're going to look at it in a year to see if there are, what the pass ratio is and what that count is, to really look at it and troubleshoot, again, if we are missing, perhaps those citizens who maybe need those passes that aren't part of the agency, we could do that at that time. Because again, it's a pilot.
Yeah.
So we can make those adjustments then. And I think it is hard to anticipate. And if there needs to be an appeal process, we could address it then. But I think, again, it's a great program and you can't anticipate everything. So we'll just have to see and wait. Just a comment.
Thank you. Any other comments from directors? Then I see that there's some people in the audience that would just love to address the agency on this issue and shed a little light on this. Ms. LaRue, how are you?
I'm well, Commissioner Holmes. I am Janice LaRue. I'm the Executive Director for First Five Placer, but I'm here today as well as a representative of the Placer Collaborative Network, which, as you know, is a collection of about 50 agencies and even the city of Roseville and other entities that provide social services to people in Placer County. And as a result of a needs assessment that we had done in conjunction with the hospitals about 4 years ago, transportation came up as one of the major issues as a barrier to access of services. And we found this out in our own needs assessment at Placer, First Five, and I was even looking at the most recent maternal child health, adolescent health needs assessment, which was just released this year, and transportation access to services was in their top 5 issues involving women and infants accessing care to really critical services. And I don't mean just medical transportation. You guys have done an amazing job, Health Express. We were so happy to see that again as part of your transit plan is an invaluable services to families. And in part of your short-range transit plan, too, you adopted the mileage reimbursement program, which First Five also helps to support. And we're really happy to see this come forward after really a year of really hard work on behalf of the CTSA, the transit operators, and the nonprofits coming together to create this. When you raised that issue about appeal, I thought, oh God, that isn't one we ever really thought about, because it was such a thoughtful process. It was so inclusive, and it really is a pilot, and I hope it's successful. I really hope that it's well utilized, but even just the process of coming together to tackle this from so many different angles was really, really valuable. It brought a lot of people who normally don't talk to people of that different ilk together, and in that just wonderfully Placer collaborative way. And I think that the program is really intelligently designed as the best that we've got to go forward. And there is real recognition that this is just a starting point and it's going to have a lot of tweaks, but it really is our best guess going forward. We've got, as part of that Placer model, nonprofits who really deliver a lot of our county services and who have high integrity and do a really good job of this. And, if they're willing to assume 100% of the cost of a bus pass up front, they're not just going to put them in a big fishbowl at the front desk and say, help yourself. They're really going to involve people and engage them and ask, what do you need, right, to make yourself resilient, to get yourself off of the kind of aid that that you're requiring at this traumatic point in your life? What can we do to help you get through that, to gain independence and resilience? And our nonprofits are really good with that. And this is just one more tool in their tool chest of helping people to become more independent and getting access to the transit system. It's my hope as well that we're going to see ridership on the transit systems increase as a result of this, just people getting used to it and gaining access to it. The requirements for people to use it are pretty strict. You can't just use it to go grocery shopping, for example. You have to be somebody who's enrolled in certain kinds of programs, and I think transitioning that responsibility of determining who's eligible to the nonprofits made most sense if the CTSA had to do that, they would be driving themselves nuts. And I mean, and assuming a certain liability. I mean, how do you determine somebody's income eligibility? But the nonprofits, they do this. They know how to do this. So I urge you on behalf of both First Five and the PCN to support this. The staff did an amazing job. The transportation officers did just a fabulous job in bringing this together. And I really do think it's a really strong, valid program. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaRue. Good morning, Tink.
Good morning. I'm Tink Miller, Executive Director at Placer Independent Resource Services here in Auburn, serving people with disabilities. And I also want to speak in support of the plan. And I'm not going to repeat everything that Janice said because she's very elegant, but I wanted to respond to a couple of things that some of you brought up. The individual agencies have grievance processes. We all have government funding, and we're required to have grievance processes. So that's part of every agency's services, policies, and procedures. And so I think that would be the appropriate way for an individual to move forward. If they were denied a pass, they would appeal to that agency's process first and go through that, which in most cases ultimately would end up with the board of directors of that agency if they weren't able to resolve it at a lower level with staff. So I think that will serve well in that instance. And I also wanted to add to the Placer County Older Adult Advisory Commission periodically does needs assessments, and the last couple of assessments that they've done in collaboration with Area Agency on Aging show that, again, access to transportation is one of the top 1 or 2 barriers that they have to deal with, especially when they get to where they can't drive anymore. Again, there is a need for this program in many sectors of the community, and we have many seniors that are on very fixed incomes and very dependent on the resources and services available. And I wanted to also, in terms of an organization, say like Loomis Life Center, the eligibility criteria that's on the first page of the plan that you have in your materials, page 43, it says it starts on. This is eligibility of the individual, not the agency. So if they're not getting funding, if the agency's not getting that kind of funding, it doesn't matter. If the individual is participating is what matters. And we all are very collaborative, as Janice pointed out, and so they can always refer to other agencies who may be serving that individual or who would accept an application from them. So that nobody would fall through the cracks. So, and I also strongly urge approval.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Anybody else wish to address the agency on this matter? Seeing none, any more comments from board members?
Guess what? Me again. Let me clarify this. So the organization buys the bus pass, and then they're reimbursed 75%, so they pay 25%, or am I misreading that?
That is correct. They purchase the pass.
And they're reimbursed 75%?
And they get reimbursed 75%.
Okay. Was that present a problem to some senior centers that have that not in their budget?
Well, during the short-range plan effort, there were individuals who sought 100% subsidy, and then there were other spectrums that said that the subsidy should be 50-50. We ended up on 25% as sort of a meeting ground on this particular program, and we used 25% on other programs, for example, the My Rides program. So it helps meet the 25% helps meet the fare box recovery ratio, which is 10%, plus it also then puts some stake on the organization's part into the. So that's how we got to the 25%.
I guess they could charge the people that wanted to get the pass. But, okay.
Yeah, I don't. With respect to the organization's budget, once again it'll get out to in terms of outreach. So if we get this out here in February, March, and do the outreach, so organizations have time to do their call for application. The program wouldn't kick in until July 1st, so hopefully we would be also in parallel with their budget process, so they would be able to budget accordingly for 15, 16.
So a person, just a regular citizen or senior, like myself, that's not on any of these programs, that wants to buy a pass, and probably wouldn't be able to, the way I read this, you need to be on some aid program. Just a general senior can't buy the pass if you belong to a group.
Correct. I mean, we list these programs here. There was a substantial debate about what is a social service program, and so and how to define what is a social service program. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of different opinions on that. And so, frankly, we went to the Attorney General has issued an advisory opinion on what social service means, and so it was these 12 programs, and so we start with that.
Okay. Well, all I'm saying is, started the senior program at MIDU in Roseville. We had just regular seniors come into the program that aren't on any of these programs, although they would like to save the money for transportation, and they wouldn't be eligible.
And that may be a comment that comes up during the pilot period. And as Director Russlin had pointed out, we just need to capture all of this data, and when we come back and make recommendations to you to right-size the program, that may be something that we just have to take into account at that point in time.
All righty, thank you. Excuse me. Any other comments, questions? All righty, and I will ask the board for action.
Approval of the item. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the item I, Placer Bus Pass Subsidy Program. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any no? Okay. Will clerk please call the roll?
Pesh? Yes. Holmes?
Yes.
Joyner?
Yes.
Nesbit? Aye. Westland?
Yes.
Yukovich?
No.
Mueller?
All right, the motion is passed. Thank you. We are now going to adjourn as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency and convene as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. We'll move to item J, Raise I-80 Construction Project Freeway Service Patrol Agreements.
I have this item.
All right.
So changing hats from buses to now freeway service patrol. So we're asking the board here to authorize the executive director to negotiate and sign 2 agreements for the Raise I-80 construction project. First will be a cooperative agreement with Caltrans for freeway service patrol. And the second one will be a contract services agreement with Extreme Towing for supplemental FSP coverage, freeway service patrol. And as you may recall, in June there was a presentation here by Caltrans on the Raise I-80 project, so I don't need to necessarily go into any detail on that. There are attachments, there are maps in attachment 1 that show the project construction sites and the detours associated with that. As part of the project, Caltrans needs to remove disabled vehicles and provide congestion relief in and around those project areas. So they have a mitigation requirement. And so they have asked us, because we currently are the contractor for freeway service patrol in Placer County, to provide a sort of pass-through service with the cost borne by Caltrans. So the cooperative agreement, which is shown in attachment 2, specifies the responsibilities of each party, and Caltrans will fund the supplemental freeway service patrol coverage provided by us, including our administrative costs, with a total amount not to exceed $250,000. And as part of that, they will provide an upfront amount, basically 30% of the cost in advance, so that will help on our cash flow with respect to the service. Our responsibility is to prepare a scope of work, and so that's shown as attachment 2, and have the supplemental freeway service patrol service in place by January 15th of 2015. And we will have the additional responsibility of managing the service as shown in or as provided in the contractor services agreement. If you recall, in October, the board approved what I'll call the regular freeway service patrol contract. We recommended extreme towing, and we went through an RFP process for that. So that service will go into place January 2nd. So meeting the January 15th shouldn't be an issue at this point. We will not be contributing any finances to this project. It's the responsibility of Caltrans to fund the project. And the FSP contractor, will be paid promptly, and that's why we have the 30% advance. And we will notify Caltrans, I believe 45 days it's required in the cooperative agreement when we are starting to run low on funds. So that will give Caltrans sufficient time to secure other funds as we approach that $250,000 cap. So we're asking the board to authorize the executive director to approve and negotiate the cooperative agreement and a contract services agreement for supplemental towing. And the Technical Advisory Committee, the TAC, concurred with the recommendation. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Director Nesbitt.
So our administrative cost is included in the $250,000. Do you have a sense of what it's going to do to our administrative costs, or what percentage of that is going to be our administrative cost?
I would say it's fairly low because we're already administering the Freeway Service Patrol contract with the same contractor. So I think the additional administrative costs are going to be minimal.
There's no amount. There's no maximum amount if it ends up being a lot of administrative headaches. If for some reason there's no maximum amount on what that.
The only maximum amount is the $250,000.
And what would happen if, for some reason, the cost really looked like it was going to exceed that? We go back to Caltrans, or we just stop it at that point?
We give them 45 days notice saying we're running low on money. Do you want to keep going, or do you want to shut it down? Okay. And so that we've really formed the agreement in a way that there's no money out of our pocket.
So there's no perception of any kind of cap on the administrative costs if it becomes a headache. You just, whatever it costs, you bill them.
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Anyone in the audience wish to address us on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for action. It's been moved and seconded to approve item J, raise I-80 construction project freeway service patrol agreements. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, we'll move to item K. Thank you. We'll move to item K, I-80 State Route 65 interchange improvements funding.
Yes, this one is my item, and what we're bringing to the board is a conceptual plan to work with Caltrans on a 50-50 match for essentially a Phase 1A of the I-80 65 interchange. This is a high priority project for the board, for Caltrans as well. And I think we're very fortunate in having Amarjeet Benapal as the newly appointed district director for Caltrans. He's worked on our projects in the past in other positions he's had with District 3, so he's very familiar with us and our abilities and needs. And in sitting down with him, we were able to brainstorm an agreement, or an idea, a plan, to jumpstart the project. And that is to do a 50-50 match that Caltrans would come up with approximately $10 million. We would come up with approximately $10 million, and that would fund the design, right-of-way, and construction for a version of Phase 1, which would extend the ramp that goes from westbound to northbound westbound I-80 to northbound 65, where there is a merge point that is backing up the loop and goes onto the main line of I-80. I know we're all painfully aware of this as we've been talking about it for several years, but this would do essentially the bare minimum that's needed to add capacity to reduce that, or to eliminate that merge point. It doesn't completely fix the problem forever, but it buys us about 5 years of capacity that gives us time to do additional things that we need to have happen to improve that interchange that we're working on right now. The benefits of this, first of all, it brings in $10 million of discretionary state money, at least, nothing's been signed on the dotted line. This is a conceptual plan, but it would bring in $10 million that we didn't have otherwise. Now, the challenge for us here is we've got to come up with our $10 million. And right now we have money for design for the project. We're currently in the environmental phase, and that is moving ahead very quickly, and again, notably to the leadership of Mr. Benapal, really pushing his staff to, they're going to be improving some early drafts of the environmental document over the Christmas holidays. So we're really getting their full cooperation and attention. We do have about $2.3 million in funding from the savings from the I-80 bottleneck project, that federal earmark that's designated for design. And as part of this agreement, Caltrans would do the design. I think our concept earlier was that we would go out for bid on that, but since Caltrans would be putting in half the money for the project, they would be doing the design. They would also be doing the right-of-way and construction for the project, and then, certainly bringing in the $10 million. So we need to figure out where the other roughly $8 million of our share comes from. My suggestion is the first call on that would be as part of a transportation sales tax that may be considered for the 2016 ballot as part of that expenditure plan. But of course, that's not a sure thing by any means, even that it will go onto the ballot, let alone be passed. We understand that risk. So we need a backup plan. And in doing that, it gets a little trickier. We do have about $6 million that is currently programmed out of that same federal earmark savings from the I-80 bottleneck towards the auxiliary lanes that would be on westbound I-80 between Douglas and Riverside, as well as eastbound I-80 between Highway 65 and Rockland Road. The funding we have in place will get us shelf-ready projects for that, essentially designed. They're right now in environmental, but that would take away the money for the construction of those. And then the remaining $2 million, roughly, would come from the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority fee program. The SPARTA just updated the fee program to add $5 million from that to this project, to the 8065 interchange. That would be a little tricky in terms of cash flow, because we have a cash flow spreadsheet that projects what money is coming in and what we've already pledged the money to. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that cash isn't exactly flowing tremendously fast. We spent a lot of money on the Lincoln bypass, but we do have a few dollars here and there, and we're hoping that that cash flow is going to be improving over the time it takes to design this project. But we have had some very I was going to say pointed discussions, but intense discussions with the jurisdictions that are set for that cash flow for reimbursements on Sierra College Boulevard. And the consensus from the Technical Advisory Committee, the Public Works directors that are involved with this, is that the I-8065 interchange is a higher priority, and that if push came to shove, they could wait for their reimbursement and defer that to moving forward with this project. So I wanted to present this plan to the board to find out if you are interested in having me pursue it. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from directors?
Question. What is the method going to be to move that merge point on the 65? How are you going to move the merge point?
Well, we wouldn't be moving it. We would be eliminating it by adding another lane.
Well, and will that be done by widening the bridge, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone in the audience wish to address us on this issue? Seeing none, sounds like a feasible idea. Let's take some action.
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the item, I-80 SR65 interchange improvement funding. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, we will move on to item L. Adoption of employee pay schedule.
Yes, this item is asking the board to formally adopt an updated employee pay schedule in compliance with a new CalPERS regulation, CCR 570.5, that came out of some of the City of Bell controversy, and we had realized we did not formally bring this to the board, even though we've essentially been complying with the regulations, having this information available. I do want to note, as part of this, we are also making the recommendation that the board add a sixth step to the salary range to allow for recognition of exemplary performance. I will, in terms of a little bit of background, we had in the past done compensation surveys fairly regularly. The first one was done back in 1997. They were done about every 3 years and then suspended in 2007. And I will also note that we've had the same staffing level since the year 2000, just under 7 full-time employees. And the staff responsibilities, I think you saw an illustration here of David wearing several hats during this meeting alone. That's common amongst our staff because we have taken on a lot more responsibilities over the last 14 years, including the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority, the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. We own our own building now and doing the freeway service patrol, and also bringing engineering advisory services in-house in the form of Luke McNeil Caird here. So in essence, we're doing more work with the same amount of people, which I know is common, but it would be nice to be able to have that sixth step in the salary range to recognize those efforts. And I want to note that this is not any kind of an automatic pay raise for staff. This allows for the potential for that as staff reviews come online. The cost for this, if fully implemented, would be about $35,000 per year. About 60% of that would come from reimbursed staffing. You know, we mentioned the Freeway Service Patrol, that's a good example, as well as Sparta, a number of entities that we're reimbursed for our administrative costs, and the remainder would come from operational savings. So this was brought to the Administrative Subcommittee on November 12th, which recommended board approval. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Director Nesbitt.
The $35,000 annually, does that include any small incremental increases in benefits or whatever associated with the pay increase?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address this item? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item the adoption of employees' pay schedule. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, we'll move to item M, selection of chair and vice chair for 2015.
Yes, this item is to designate the board members that will serve as chair and vice chair for the coming year. This would take effect on January 1st. Okay. And we are fortunate in that the bylaws specify the rotation of the chair and the vice chair. And up this this next year is the City of Rockland representative as chair and the City of Roseville representative as vice chair, and staff recommends approval.
Alrighty. Any questions, comments from board members? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the selection of chair and vice chair for 2015. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, we'll move to the executive director's report.
Yes, briefly, I had two items to discuss. One is that the legislature went into session, starting their new year, as it were, this past Monday. And I will note that I received a summary of what has already been introduced. And I found it very interesting to share with the board that three bills have been introduced already to defer gasoline and fuels from cap and trade. So clearly that remains a controversial issue. I don't know where that might go, but I would say it was top on the minds of legislators. The other common subject that seemed to be introduced in terms of transportation bills was changing the targets on AB 32, which, if you recall, that is to reduce the greenhouse gases to a 1990 level by the year 2000. But interest...
2020.
Oh, 2020.
We missed the target, I'm telling you.
The interesting thing about that is that some of the bills want to increase the requirement and some want to decrease it. So another thing to keep an eye on. The other thing I wanted to mention was I attended what is known as the Focus on the Future conference this past month in Santa Clara, where transportation agencies that have sales taxes have an annual conference. A lot of very interesting information there, some very interesting commentary, including one comment from a high-level official with the legislature transportation committee wondering why the state was involved in selecting bikeway projects in the transportation program, which I think was well received by the group, certainly by me. But in any case, a lot of good connections there, a lot of good information, as well as I am this year the chair of what is known as the Aspiring Counties group, which are counties that do not have transportation sales taxes, that we share information and ideas, commiserate about the situation with the state and the lack of funding. But we hosted an annual breakfast. Everybody went Dutch.
High aspirations.
High aspirations. And I think we've got a lot of good information sharing and a lot of support for our efforts from the greater state interests. Those that typically support these kind of efforts, we're very interested in what we're doing, and we're very intrigued at the positive polling that we're getting. So that was really gratifying. So that concludes my report.
All righty. Any board direction to staff? All right, looks like you're doing well. You have informational items there for your perusal. At this point, we will adjourn to closed session. This closed session is being held pursuant to Government Code 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Executive Director. We will now adjourn to closed session. Board has returned from closed session where we did an evaluation of our executive director. Executive director received high marks from all the directors and is doing an exemplary job. She went out of her way to say how pleased she is with her staff, and we concur. The staff has done a tremendous job wearing different hats, and it's good to see some young faces out there. So anyhow, with that...
What's wrong with the seniors?
That's what we want to know. Having said that, that concludes the business before the board, and if you had a comment or...
I believe the action requested is to approve the amendment to my employment agreement and also extend the term for another year.
Okay.
And for the 5% merit pay increase, as well as adopting goals.
Alrighty.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the item. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any abstentions? The motion is passed. And now we will adjourn. Thank you very much.